now joined by local youth activist Stephen Haragayp. So Haragayp, good evening and thank you so much for making the time to join us.
Good evening, Theo. Thank you.
Would you say the youth development programs in the country currently speak to contemporary issues affecting young people?
I think it's important for us to realize that young people are a diverse group, and therefore all the programming that happens around youth needs to be targeted to those specific groups. When you speak about youth, we speak about young adults, young adolescents, youth with disabilities, youth with education, those without, those who are poor, those who are not. So I think it's important for us to find targeted intervention and programming. And at this moment, when we look at the contemporary issues that young people are faced with, inequality, as well as access to education, access to information, the quality of education, I don't think our programming necessarily speaks to a diverse group of young people.
One of the key questions that most people would probably like to know is, what do you think are some of the dangers of not implementing some of these empowerment programs?
When you think about the dangers, we have to think about long-term. 2030 is just around the corner, 12 years from now. So somebody who starts in grade 1 right now will be graduating from high school by 2030. And if young people are not given the empowerment that they need, they're going to be removed from society, they're going to be excluded from society, they're going to be excluded from the participating in the economy because they don't have enough skills. There'll be challenges also around how they engage in the societal space as well as the business space to becoming competitive in the global world as well. So we have to think about what are the dangers. Dangers are on multi-level and has to be integrated into our programming to be able to speak to the whole lived experience of the person. When you think about the sexual reproductive health rights of young people as well, how do we speak to that? And how do we mobilize and energize youth to actually become participants in the development agenda for Namibia?
So it says, looking at Africa, Africa is the world's youngest continent, with 60% of Africa's population being under the age of 25. Yet we look at a situation where we currently have the youngest continent being run by its oldest leaders.
Yes.
Do you think our leadership is taking or talking to the youth, or just talking about the youth, considering the generational gap between the two groups?
Most of the leadership is speaking only about young people and using young people as tokens to participate. So we don't have a full representation of who the young people are. We don't have a full representation of the voice of young people. As one person, you cannot represent such a wide demographic. Secondly, also, because they're so disconnected to the lived experiences of what young people are going through. Right now, for example, for young men, internet is a basic human right. They need Wi-Fi, they need access to that. But somebody who's in their 70s doesn't understand the impact of being on social media. When you think about our government, are we actually engaging young people where they are? Are we in the rural areas? Are we in the social media spaces? Are we in the economic spaces? And actually speaking to the needs of young people that are unemployed, that are actually entrepreneurial, who are on the social media space. So I think it is a huge disconnect because of the generational gap, because of our experience and how we see the world and how we engage the world is completely different. And young people are much more global now than they were ever before, whereas our leaders are completely bogged down on what's happening in the country. But we have to think about how do we make ourselves globally competitive as youth.
Looking at competitiveness, where do you see us going?
Namibia as a whole.
Namibia as a whole, correct.
I believe that we need to start thinking about how do we make investments specifically targeting our schooling and our education, because we don't, from the ECD level already, make the necessary adjustments, then we're not going to be able to achieve Vision 2030. If we miss that place, we have not prepared young people to be able to compete, not just only in the school place, but also in the marketplace. Because when you think about it, the 16 to 24-year-old group of young people are either out of school or out of work, which means that there's a snowballing effect that's going to happen in the future as well.
When you're talking about investment in the educational sector, what is it that you're referring to specifically?
I'm referring to access. Access for every child to be able to go to school. And not just go to school, have quality education. Education that doesn't just speak to learning theory, but be able to translate what they're learning into practical work. Be able to understand how to build vocational trainings for young people to actually develop their skills so they're able to manufacture, so they're able to grow, and so they're able to diversify themselves. Not just grow young people to be civil servants, but really how to create young people that are actually able to compete in the economy of our country as well, and actually contribute to the greater economy of the continent as well. So I think those are some of the conversations that we need to start thinking about, and what are the measurements that we put in place to be able to say this amount of young people have come through, and this is how we've provided for them, and how we're improving and providing monitoring and evaluations, and with key performance and benchmarks that can show that young people are actually improving in that space.
Definitely not to take into consideration there. So Haragayp, thank you so much for making the time to join us.
Always a pleasure, boss.